Hi, everyone. This is Tony Colangelo here, and I'm with my good friend Wayne Capilli.
Hi.
And we are with you today because we wanted to talk about composition. Recently, Wayne and I did a session. We did a webinar critiquing some photos with our good friends at Shooting Spaces with Rich Baum and Brian Berkowitz. And Wayne and I had such a great time on that webinar and even preparing for that webinar that we thought we would just continue doing this. We both are so committed to composition. We know that great composition and improving composition is the best, fastest, easiest way to get better. And we thought we would just pull together on a pretty regular basis just a quick and snappy video where in a few minutes we would do a critique on a photo, where we could talk about all things composition, sort of high on the education piece, and very quick on time because we know how busy everyone is. Wayne, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that before we jump to our photo.
Yeah, a lot of times as we start doing pictures, we have been inundated with the rules of what we have to do to make a good photo. And so what we wanted to do is kind of give you the opposite thing of when to break the rules and to do it creatively and know that you're breaking the rules. Doing it with intent.
Yeah. And of course, we're going to start by talking about the principles of great composition, but we are going to include times when you can get creative with the rules. Wayne and I both believe that they're not really rules per se, in as much as guidelines. Would you agree, Wayne?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Kind of like starting points.
Yeah.
All right. So we hope that you'll continue to join us. If you have photos that you would like to submit to Wayne or myself, you can do that at our email addresses, and we'll have links to our email addresses in the description below. And hopefully we can continue doing this for quite some time and continue critiquing photos and helping everybody with your composition.
Okay.
So Wayne, shall we jump in?
Yeah.
Okay. So can you see I'm assuming you can see my screen, Wayne?
Yes.
Okay. So Wayne and I picked this as our first photo because, one of the first rules that we learn in real estate is related to camera height, and specifically in camera height in kitchens. And the rule, of course, that I'm sure many of you are aware, is that we want to have our camera at a height where we don't see the underside of the upper cabinets or the shelving, as you can see here on the side. And generally speaking, that's a great rule. But in our recent composition critique webinar, a colleague of ours submitted this photo, and because he wasn't feeling great about it, and he asked for a critique. So Wayne and I thought that this would be a good starting point. So right off the top, Wayne, in this photo, this feels really, really high to me.
Yes.
That if anything, the camera is way above the bottom of the upper cabinets, right?
Right.
It feels really, really high. And actually, Wayne, why don't you give a little bit of context for where this rule got started, with the long time ago with the ugly under cabinet lights. Why don't, because you and I are of a vintage where we remember the early under cabinet lights.
Yes.
And they weren't too pretty. So why don't you give a little bit of background on that?
Years ago, what people would do to put lights underneath cabinets is they would go to Home Depot or to Target and buy those little battery-operated pucks and stick them underneath the cabinets, or they would take those long fluorescent tubes and kind of run cords around to try to get light underneath there.
Yeah.
Pretty. Both ways made the under part of it unsightly, and something that you really didn't want to see. Also, a few years ago, most manufacturers, cabinet makers, didn't finish the underneath of the cabinets, also making it not worth photographing.
Yeah. So, and that led to the rule being you want your camera height in kitchens, um, you want your lens no lower than the bottom of the upper cabinetry. And as a starting point, that's a really, really good rule. But in this photo here, we see where the photographer maybe has gotten a little bit too high. And I'm going to get my paintbrush here, Wayne,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to talk about a couple of things. So, for example, on this particular photo, and let me sure I got a sharp edge brush. I don't think we want to be looking this far into the sink. I don't think it's serving the photo well. And certainly from a camera height perspective, I would dare say, ballpark, Wayne, help me out on this. I would dare say that the camera lens is probably about there, which is really, really high. And right across the scene, it feels like, I don't know, it just feels off. It feels like we're very, very high.
Yeah, and also one of the things about using a wide angle lens and being high, if you look at the bottom left hand corner of the picture, not only does it have that aircraft carrier feel to the cabinet or to the top of the counter, but it literally is pouring out of the frame. So, don't necessarily want that. Again, high angles, wide angle, flat plane, that tends to be pouring out.
Yeah.
So that's also one of the things that you notice that you may not. That's something that you should be aware of when you are shooting high and with the wide angle. That
Yeah.
foreground
Yeah.
planes will be pouring out of the picture as opposed to being level.
Yeah. So pouring out, just to be clear for our viewers, we're talking about this plane right here
Mm-hmm.
that is significantly distorted. And as you noted, with a wide angle lens where your subject matter, like this island, is so close to the camera, the plane of these sorts of elements get disproportionately distorted and stretched and skewed, particularly as we get to the corners of the frame. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a couple of variables here that aren't really helping out the photographer. And so, this particular photographer, in following up with him, he was kind enough to share a second photo, which I think really highlights when it might be appropriate to break this rule in the kitchen. And
Wait. Before you switch it over,
Yeah.
if we look at this picture, let's actually judge what he wants to show us. He wants to show us probably the sink, the stove, and the bottom of the wine rack or the wine fridge.
Yeah.
So, we could actually crop to that with this angle, but instead, go ahead, go to the next one. This shows much more information about not only the kitchen, but the details of the kitchen. And with it being lower, we can actually see that it's intentionally built in that have lights underneath the cabinets, which is now a feature.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that we definitely need to be mindful of, that, under cabinet or under shelf lighting is actually going to be a major design piece in a kitchen. And we see the sort of warm, soft light that comes out of these lights and the way it reflects on the backsplash.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have these sorts of high-end contemporary built-in lights, I'm less fussed about going really, really high with my camera position, and because really it's an elemental part of the design.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And also, when it's squared on like this as a 1 point, we don't want this any higher because we don't want the uh, refrigerator or the stove being stretched out if it's up high, and even if it's shifted down, it would cause that if you're using a tilt shift lens, and if you were up high and shifted down, it would still have that distortion down at the bottom.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So again, when you're in a kitchen, good starting point. Make sure that your lens is at a height where you're not seeing the underside of the upper cabinets. However, when the underside of the upper cabinets become part of the design, then yeah, you can afford to go a little bit lower. The other consideration as it relates to camera height is always being mindful of where you're positioned in the camera, being mindful of distortion. And certainly, even in this photo here, Wayne, I think this particular photographer could have done a pan to the left.
Hmm.
At the end of the day, we see some information here. We have a lot of empty, a lot of negative space on the right side that's really not adding value to the scene. That here, let me get the crop tool. That if we were to pan
Hmm.
a little bit more to the left, we'd have this big vertical element. If we're going to be using the rule of thirds, as I've got this grid here showing, this vertical element would be a lot closer to the right vertical third. We'd be seeing a lot less of this empty space. It wouldn't be taking up so much of the shot, because at the end of the day, a contemporary kitchen like this, you're not just going to do one photo. What you're going to do is you're going to, go into this corner. Let's go over here. Where's my paintbrush? Right over here. We're going to go into this corner and probably shoot this way. So we're going to get this information eventually. We don't need to show a whole bunch. We don't need to show the entire house in one photo, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So this is our first little composition critique. If you have photos that you'd like to submit, again, take a look for Wayne's or my email address in the description. Please feel free to submit your photos, and Wayne and I will be doing these sorts of quick and easy, to the point composition critiques pretty regularly, and we hope you'll join us.
And thank you for joining us.
Yes. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.